What's up, everyone? Matt Kajeski here, back again with the Stokastic DFS channel. And today I'm here to talk some college football DFS. We have a showdown slate on Wednesday, December the 21st, and it's a banger. Honestly, my favorite showdown slate of the bowl season. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. And for those of you on podcasts, please leave a rating and review and subscribe over there too. That helps us a ton. So thank you if you've done that. And we are presented today by No House Advantage, bringing you a new and unique way to take advantage of some player props. They've got a couple ways you can do this on the platform, a couple unique varieties of player props. First one I want to highlight is their Verse the House. So just like it sounds, this is where you are making essentially lineups of player props, but you're not playing against other people. You're playing against the house, similar to your traditional books. And they also have another contest called Pick'em Contest. This is where you're actually playing against other people. Functions more like DFS tournaments, where you're making a lineup of player props, but you're putting them on a confidence interval. The most confident goes at the top, goes towards number one, least confident at the end, but it's you, and it's you versus a tournament of people. They have massive prizes. They've had tournaments up to $25,000. And one of the most important things here is they're not always filling. You can get overlay in these contests, which is almost gone in all of DFS. And it's one of the biggest edges you can possibly create. For reference, if this is a 1,000-person tournament and the top prize is $10,000, whether 1,000 people enter, 500 people enter, 200 people enter, they still have to pay out that top prize of $10,000 no matter what, and they still have to pay out the entire prize pool, whatever it's sized for. That's a huge advantage to you if you're taking advantage of that, and that's readily available on No House Advantage. So make sure to check them out. You can click the link in the video description below to also get a first match deposit bonus up to $50. Doing fantastic things over there. And make sure to check out their overlay. All right, let's dive into the single game. Man, this is a fun one. It's been crazy too. A lot of opt-outs in and out of the portal. I mean, it's been insane. It's South Alabama taking on Western Kentucky. 4.5-point spread in favor of South Alabama. 56 total. To kind of recap the line movement just briefly, this was around a pick'em early in bowl season, and we had news that Austin Reed was going in the portal, the Western Kentucky signal caller. The line ballooned all the way up to South Alabama, -8. A massive amount of opt-outs, transfers, departures on Western Kentucky. And South Alabama is largely intact. Almost their whole team, it looks like, is going to be playing in this game. Again, just cautionary tale of all bowl season. Always be watching in pregame warmups, just so you know your players are active. But it looks like South Alabama is going to be fully intact. The total in the game is 56. That's back up from about 52.5. Again, a lot of that has to do with the Austin Reed news. But let's dive into this. South Alabama, we have the Jaguars ranked 78th in pace, 46% pass rate. This is a power-based run team for the most part. And Carter Bradley's under center. He's been mostly a game manager, but he's actually been pretty efficient as a passer. You're not going to get a ton of rushing for him, just 70 cumulative yards on the year, and he's rarely getting designed run attempts. But as a passer, he does average about 248 yards per game on 31 attempts. And the biggest thing here is Western Kentucky's played solid defense to start the year, especially against the pass, but they are down so many bodies. They've lost multiple safeties to the portal. They have a corner who might be going to the NFL draft. He's already declared. They have linemen up front that are out for this team. They're going to be down 4, 5, maybe 6 starters when this game kicks off on defense specifically. So this is going to be potentially an avenue for South Alabama to score more points maybe than we expect. And their implied team total is already 30. So we want to play these guys. Bradley, I think, is going to be a little more contrarian at quarterback just because they have a certain LaDamian Webb in the backfield who's $3,000 cheaper and is going to handle what looks like a sizable workload here. So let's pivot there. LaDamian Webb should not be at risk of missing this game. He already announced he's returning to school next year. He did deal with an injury down the stretch, but he's now had close to a month to get healthy here. And he only missed one game with the injury anyway, so I'm expecting LaDamian Webb to be healthy. On the year, he averages 19.6 touches per game, 92.5 rushing yards, and another 17 as a receiver. He has a pretty decent receiving workload and efficiency numbers there. He automatically stands out as maybe the single best captain play on the slate. And if not, he's close. He's expensive, but he's definitely a guy we want to take advantage of when we can. Behind him, it's kind of been a mixture of backs. They had Marco Lee for a while. He's second on the team in carries, but Braylon McReynolds is actually second on the team in touches. He's a bit of a pass-catching back, and he's actually carried the ball a lot, more than any other back since LaDamian Webb got banged up. They also use Omni Wells a little bit here. These are more just your like GPP dart throws. Let's say South Alabama wins this game by 14 points and they get a change of pace back involved. That's the kind of build where I'm maybe playing some of these guys. But ultimately, I don't have a ton of interest in them. These are just mix and match GPP options. And my favorite, to be honest, would be McReynolds just based off recent play. But I feel like we're dealing with a bit of volatility here. To pull up their snaps from their most recent game, you had LaDamian Webb at 27. Then you had both Braylon McReynolds and Omni Wells at 22 apiece. Marco Lee came in at 4. So I think rather than play Marco Lee at 9,600, you're probably just going down and playing the cheap guys if you are doubling up on running back, which I don't think is necessary. Receiver, Jalen Wayne is going to the Senior Bowl. He's accepted that, but he hasn't said he's missing the game. So I'm anticipating him playing tentatively. Watch him. He's probably the guy we need to watch the most on South Alabama from a DFS perspective, but I think he plays. He's also, not a first-round draft talent, so getting a game, an island game on a Wednesday during bowl season could really behoove him if he plays well. He averages 8 targets per game, 66 yards nearly. He leads the team with 790 receiving yards. He's been a strong player for this team for multiple seasons now. So I think he's deservedly priced up at the top here for this team, 26.5% target share. He's done enough to warrant this. I think he's firmly in play. You could play him as a contrarian captain too. Then from there, we have a bit of a pricing discrepancy. Devin Voisin and Colin Lacey. They're the wide receiver 2 and 3. And Lacey's actually second on the team in receiving yards, 756. That's just narrowly behind Jalen Wayne at 790 and narrowly ahead of Devin Voisin's 718. So it's pretty tightly packed. But the target volume is not quite as good for Lacey. He averages 5.9 per game. Voisin comes in at 6.6. So immediately you're looking at two players that have slightly different roles. Voisin's a little more underneath, and Lacey's a little bit more of a big play threat. But ultimately, the target volume is very close for these two, and it actually slants Voisin's way a little bit here. So I think just for the purposes of roster construction, it's going to be a little bit easier to get Voisin in lineups because of that price. He's just a little bit easier overall to take a stab at down here. And then once we get beyond that, it's a showdown slate. We got to basically uncover every single stone possible. We'll talk about the ancillary receivers for those of you playing some of the larger tournaments. You have tight end DJ Thomas Jones at the stone minimum, which is honestly probably a mistake by DraftKings. We don't have FanDuel pricing yet, of course. But his route rate's 42%. He just has been targeted a decent amount recently. On the year, he averages 3.3 targets, but up to 3.8 over the last 4 games. He's going to make sense as just your pure salary saver if it comes down to that. But it's not just him by himself. You have Lincoln Sefcik. He's a player that's going to have route rate somewhere between like 20 to 30%. His targets per game are 1.7. He's a guy you could maybe use. I think their prices should be flipped. Like you should have DJ Thomas Jones price where Sefcik is basically. And then once you get beyond that, you have other tight end Brandon Crum playing a fair amount too. He popped up for a 53% route rate in their last game, which was a bit surprising, but he hasn't played a lot of games this year. So Crum is a guy I think you could also pivot to at 1,500, just assuming he plays. They will use a decent amount of 12 personnel here. So this is worth mentioning here. Crum, again, he's only played a couple games this year, unless I'm missing something, which I don't think I am, but you can see he hasn't had a pretty good route rate by any means. I'll check on the games played for Crum right here just to make sure I'm not. Now, he's actually appeared in a lot of games, but he hasn't seen targets for some reason. Anyway, all that to say, I think you could use him as a GPP play. Let's go to the Western Kentucky side. This is the side that's harder to decipher, I think, based on some opt-outs, but they're 18th in pace. They have a 60.5% pass rate. They run that air raid. Austin Reed, I think, is going to play in the game. He's back with the team, so there's no reason why he shouldn't. He's one of the best captain plays on the board because of the offense. He's a walking 300-yard bonus, 327 yards per game on 42 and a half attempts almost. He does have a somewhat decent rushing floor, 199 cumulative yards there. That's very good for him. The backfield is probably going to be a rotation to some degree. You have not seen Kai Robichaud recently, but he's now had a lot of time to get healthy. I think we might see Robichaud here, which would kind of muddy things for this offense. In their most recent game without him, Davion Irving Poindexter handled 17 carries as the presumed lead back for this team. It's 18 touches overall. Behind him, again, Robichaud didn't play, LT Sanders didn't play, Jakari Moses didn't play, and Marquise Stepp, the multi-year transfer, he just handled, can't see targets for him. He didn't even have a target. He handled just 5 carries. So this is a spot where we should be watching the backfield for injuries, seeing who's active and who's not, and that might not even give us a strong indication. We'll have to watch this closely, but there's a chance this could be pretty narrow with essentially just Davion Irving Poindexter and Marquise Stepp handling the work. And just for reference, I have snaps up for this in their most recent game. It was Davion Irving Poindexter 52, Marquise Stepp 22, and LT Sanders just 3. You didn't see any snaps for Robichaud or Jakari Moses. Receiving game, Dawood Davis declared for the draft. I would not anticipate seeing him here, but Malachi Corley announced he's going to return. So that gives you at least one alpha in the passing game here. He averages 90 yards per game and 9.3 targets, went over 1,000 yards. He's your number one receiver target and a strong captain play. Without Dawood Davis, again, presuming he doesn't play, I would be shocked if he did, but as always, monitor this pregame. If he plays, he's the 2. If not, you're going to see Jalen Hall operate as the 2. He's had 30 targets over the last 2 games. On the year, he only averages 7.2 per game, but he's now seen 17 and 13 targets in back-to-back games. Just absurd workload. And then Michael Matheson, the Akron transfer, should slide in as the 3. Averages 46 yards per game, 5.7 targets. Both of these receivers, Hall and Matheson, have seen a target increase since the Dawood Davis opt-out. And Davis did miss their season finale. He was highly owned in that game, too. It was trouble. But Matheson is the cheapest receiver play who has that locked-in solid workload. I think he's fine. From there, the logical replacement for Dawood Davis is Dalvin Smith. He's 3,900. Ran a majority of the routes in their last game where David missed on 9 targets. Expect him to be 75+% owned just because he's the stone lock for value on this slate. Makes a ton of sense there. And outside of that, I think receiver is kind of difficult to evaluate. I wouldn't anticipate seeing anybody else, but if there is a guy who rotates on the field here, I would anticipate this being Easton Messer, who was the only other player to run routes among their receivers in their most recent game. They've also had Craig Burt transfer and a couple other of their ancillary receivers transfer. They've also had their tight ends transfer. Joshua Simon and Joey Belgian, they're not playing in the game. So the only other tight end who's run any routes recently is River Helms. Now, River Helms is the Stoneman, but I think they're probably just going to run 4 wide rather than playing River Helms. If you want to take a shot, he's the stone minimum, but I don't feel great about it. Would rather run out a Dalvin Smith or just pay up and build a different construction. But that'll do it for us. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. If I missed something, if you have a question, any of that. Otherwise, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. Those help us a ton. So thank you if you've done that. And if you'd like to, you could reach out to me on Twitter at Matt_Gajeski. We'll be doing these videos all throughout bowl season, hitting every bowl game. So stick around. We'll be here for you. But in the meantime, good luck, everyone. We'll see you later.